Discogs, short for discographies, is a website and database of information about audio recordings, including commercial releases, promotional releases, and bootleg or off-label releases. The Discogs servers, currently hosted under the domain name Discogs.com, are owned by Zinc Media, Incorporated, and are located in Portland, Oregon, U.S. While the site lists releases in all genres and on all formats, it is especially known as the largest online database of electronic music releases, and of releases on vinyl media. Discogs currently contains over 6 million releases, by 3.9 million artists, across over 743,000 labels, contributed from nearly 238,000 contributor user accounts a year, with these figures constantly growing as users continually add previously unlisted releases to the site over time. History: the Discogs.com domain name was registered in August 2000, and Discogs itself was launched in November 2000 by programmer, DJ, and music fan Kevin Lewandowski, originally as a database of electronic music. He was inspired by the success of community-built sites such as Slashdot, eBay, and Open Directory Project, and decided to use this model for a music discography database. The site's original goal was to build the most comprehensive database of electronic music, organized around the artists, labels, and releases available in that genre. In 2003 the Discogs system was completely rewritten, and in January 2004 it began to support other genres, starting with hip-hop. Since then, it has expanded to include rock and jazz in January 2005 and funk soul, Latin, and reggae in October of the same year. In January 2006 blues and non-music were added. Classical music started being supported in June 2007, and in October 2007 the final genres were turned on adding support for the stage and screen, brass and military, children's, and folk, world, and country music genres, allowing capture of virtually every single kind of audio recording that has ever been released. On June 30, 2004, Discogs published a report, which included information about the number of its contributors. This report claimed that Discogs had 15,788 contributors and 260,789 releases. On July 20, 2007 a new system for sellers was introduced on the site called Market Price History. It made information available to users who paid for a subscription though 60 days information was free. Access to the past price items was sold for up to 12 months ago by previous sellers who had sold exactly the same release. At the same time, the $12 per year charge for advanced subscriptions was abolished, as it was felt that the extra features should be made available to all subscribers now that a better, some may say fairer, revenue stream had been found from sellers and purchasers. However, at the beginning of 2008, the Market Price History was also made free of charge for all users, still giving up to a 12-month view of historical sales data for any release. Milestones Discogs publishes information indicating the number of releases, labels, and artists presently in its database, along with its contributors. Other projects In mid-2014, a side project website called Vinyl Hub was started, in order for users to add record shops and stores from around the world, with information concerning location, contact details, what type of items they stocked, al. In late 2014, the company released 2 new beta websites. Filmogs is where users can submit both films and releases as separate entities, meaning users could add their physical film collections and/or add films generally to the database, and track them as part of their collection or similar. Discogs lets users add and track music equipment like synths, drum machines, and other electronic music making equipment. API In mid-August 2007, Discogs data became publicly accessible via a RESTful, XML-based API and a license that allowed specially attributed use, but did not allow anyone to alter, transform, or build upon the data. The license has since been changed to a public domain one. Prior to the advent of this license and API, Discogs data was only accessible via the Discogs website's HTML interface and was intended to be viewed only using web browsers. the HTML interface remains the only authorized way to modify Discogs data. On June 7, 2011, version 2 of the API was released. Notable in this release was that a license key was no longer required, the default response was changed from XML to JSON, and the 5,000 queries per day limit was removed. On November 1, 2011, a major update to version 2 of the API was released. This new release dropped support for XML, data is always returned in JSON format, however the monthly data dumps of new data are only provided in XML format. On February 1, 2014, Discogs modified their API so that image requests will now require auth authorization, requiring each user of third-party applications to have a Discogs application ID, with image requests now limited to 1,000 per day. Additionally, the Premium API service was dropped. On June 24, 2014, Discogs deprecated their XML API in lieu of a JSON formatted API. Discogs also allows full XML downloads of his release, artist, and label data through the http data.discogs.com subdomain. Contribution system. The data in Discogs comes from submissions contributed by users who have registered accounts on the website. The system has gone through 4 major revisions. Version 1 all incoming submissions were checked for formal and factual correctness by privileged users called moderators, or mods for short, who had been selected by site management. Submissions and edits wouldn't become visible or searchable until they received a single positive vote from a mod. An even smaller pool of super moderators called editors had the power to vote on proposed edits to artist and label data. Version 2 This version introduced the concept of submission limits, which prevented new users from submitting more than 2 to 3 releases for moderation. The number of possible submissions by a user increased on a logarithmic scale. The purpose of this was twofold. 1, it helped keep the submission queue fairly small and manageable for moderators, and 2, it allowed the new user to acclimatize themselves slowly with the many formatting rules and guidelines of submitting to Discogs. Releases required a number of votes to be accepted into the database. Initially the number of votes required was from 4 different moderators, but in time the amount was decreased to 3 and then 2. Version 3 V3 launched in August 2007. Submission limits were eliminated, allowing each user to submit an unlimited number of updates and new entries. New releases added to the database were explicitly marked as unmoderated with a top banner, and updates to existing items, such as releases, artists, or labels, were not shown until they were approved by the moderators. Version 4 This system launched on March 10, 2008. New submissions and edits currently take effect immediately. Any time a new release is added or old release edited, that entry becomes flagged as needing votes. A flagged entry is marked as a full yellow bar across a release in the list views and, like version 3, a banner on the submission itself although, initially, this banner was omitted. Any item can be voted on at any time, even if it isn't flagged. Votes consist of a rating of the correctness and completeness of the full set of data for an item, as assessed by users who have been automatically determined, by an undisclosed algorithm, to be experienced and reliable enough to be allowed to cast votes. An item's average vote is displayed with the item's data. The ranking system has also changed in V4. In V3, rank points were only awarded to submitters when a submission was accepted by moderator votes. While in V4, rank points are now awarded immediately when a submission is made, regardless of the accuracy of the information and what votes it eventually receives, if any. Discogs aware metadata software. Tag editors ASMT MP3 tagger a single release tagger with Discogs support. For bar 2000 freeware media player and music management software with a plugin for Discogs support. Helium Music Manager a music management software with a plugin for Discogs support. Gyrcos a shareware OS X Linux spreadsheet-based tag editor with Discogs support, MP3 tag a freeware tag editor with Discogs support. Orange CD Catalog a music management software with Discogs support, Pudlitag a free and open source tag editor written for PyQt, Tagog a Linux audiophile tagger with Discogs support. Tag Scanner a freeware tag editor with Discogs, FreeDB, TrackType.org support, Anacardia a freeware automated MP3 tagger with Discogs support. Tygo a spreadsheet-based tag editor with Discogs support. The Godfather a freeware tag editor with Discogs script support. The Tagger a MP3 and AAC formats tag editor for OS X with Discogs support. Kid3 a open source project, tagger for all common music formats with Discogs support. MP3 file name a online MP3 file name generator, based on Discogs release data. Discogs bar a Discogs navigation and search control toolbar for Firefox. Album art downloader a Discogs cover art downloads. www.discogs a Perl module for interfacing with the Discogs API. XLD a CD ripper and audio file converter for OS X with Discogs support. See also, list of online music databases. References. External links, Discogs a official site, Discogs Wiki a Discogs own wiki site, for discussions on issues and future feature ideas.